Thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Keela Polstaway. I am the program manager here at the Arts Ed Collective, and I manage the advancement grant program for the collective, which means that I'll be the one communicating all of the need-to-know items throughout all phases of the granting cycle. So today we'll run through the basics of the grant program, including eligibility requirements, the application mechanics. Anytime during the open application period that you come across any questions or you're in need of technical support, please feel free to reach out anytime to either me or your Arts Ed Collective liaison for support. So I will start off by saying a big thank you to our generous supporters on the Funders Council. This will be the 6th year that the Arts Ed Collective has offered this granting opportunity. In the past year, the program awarded over $748,000 to 42 districts from across the county to initiate or expand arts education in their districts. The Arts Ed Collective staff is really excited to continue to offer the flexible funding opportunity while supporting increases in quantity, quality, and equity of arts education across the county. If you have not yet done so, please take the time to download the guidelines and the application instructions at the address on the screen. The online grant management system can be accessed anytime at lacountyarts.org/apply, which is where you will find the application. You can also find the direct links to these on the Arts Ed Collective website if you have been there. To that end, I'll split the webinar into 3 sections. The first section will just be a guidelines overview. Then we'll go into the application questions and criteria, and an overview of the online grant management system fluid review. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Los Angeles County school districts that are in partnership with the Arts Ed Collective will be implementing board-approved strategic plans for arts education in 2019-20 are eligible to apply. If this doesn't describe your school district now, other opportunities do exist for you to work with the Arts Ed Collective. If your school district does not currently have a strategic plan for arts education or current plan needs updating, the Arts Ed Collective provides coaching to school districts interested in creating a new plan free of cost. A district arts committee comprised of local stakeholders led by an Arts Ed Collective coach develops a 5-year plan for sustaining long-term district-wide arts education. Applications for coaching support for next year are now available at the link there on your screen. If you currently have a strategic plan but would like to update your plan, you may apply for both coaching and advancement grant implementation funding concurrently. The applications for coaching support are due March 13, which is the same deadline as the advancement grant. We offer ongoing support for arts coordinators and district arts committee members through a county-wide network of leaders and practitioners who convene regularly to learn and collaborate. Events can be found at the link on the screen. Our next upcoming events include a district site visit on February 26th and our regularly scheduled meeting with arts coordinator to discuss the new California State Art Standard is on March 22nd. You may register for both of those events if you navigate to the event page. Arts Ed Collective staff members serve as dedicated liaisons for school districts, connecting colleagues and strategies from across the county. So you can always reach out to your district liaison and help us connect you with one another and support you with any issues on arts education. And lastly, the Arts Ed Profile tool allows teachers and parents, administrators, and others to find data about arts education provided by LA County Public Schools. The Arts Ed Profile report provides key recommendations for addressing quantity, quality, and equity in arts education. The online tool and report are available, and you can use this tool and the resources in support of arts education in your district. The Advancement Grant offers financial support to Los Angeles County school districts working to provide quality arts education to all students by providing support to the project area or areas that are of the highest priority for your district as identified through the district's strategic plan for arts education. Our goal is to help your district advance arts education strategies from the district's plan. This is our effort to see the practices and resources that sustain arts education flourish in your district and to assist the district in moving closer to ensuring all students have access to quality arts education. A successful funding request addresses key arts education action items from your plan. The district will need to make a strategic choice when selecting a project to be supported by referencing either a strategic arts education plan or the district LCAP. The request will identify what priority your district will focus on for next year and clearly outline the project. A successful request will also address how this strategy will make a lasting difference in your district, how it will create new knowledge and skills, or a new way of assuring arts education is accessible and high quality. In short, how is it filling the gaps in arts education across your district? Eligible funding requests will either initiate or expand activities or services that address one or more goals for advancing arts education in your schools. Projects can range in different areas, but may include priorities such as content, sustainability, or infrastructure. And lastly, districts may request up to $25,000 in matching funds. There are a few expenses that are ineligible as part of the grant program. These include staffing expenses that supplant the cost of existing district arts coordinators or teacher positions, services for students that occur outside of the traditional school day, and services from artists or arts organizations that are not listed in the Community Arts Educators Directory, which I will touch on later in the workshop. Note that when preparing your project or program budget, that funding may not cover overhead or ongoing administrative costs. For those of you who have participated in the program before, a few changes have been made. Here's a rundown of what's new for the 2019-20 guidelines. Program success is measured by the increase in quantity, quality, and equitable distribution of arts instruction provided in participating districts. This year, we have included the definitions on page 3 of the grant guidelines as they have been defined in the Arts Ed Profile Report. For those of you who have been grantees in the past, you will recognize that the final report of this program has asked you to identify progress and outcomes based on these indicators. Those questions have not changed. This update is to ensure that we all have a common language as it relates to how the Arts Ed Collective is measuring increases in arts education. Those definitions are as follows. Our measure for quality for arts education includes the amounts of arts education being offered for each discipline, the ratio of credentialed instructors to student body, and the count of different types of arts instructors. The variables in our measure for quality include arts instruction offered as discrete courses and or integrated into other subjects, shared written curriculum among instructors teaching the same discipline, knowledge-based and or performance-based assessment tools, technology used in teaching the arts, and arts instructors' participation in professional development training. And finally, the question of whether high-quality education is distributed equally to all students is critical to the mission of the Arts Ed Collective. The measure of equity is analyzed through the following categories: race and ethnicity, English learners, students on free and reduced price meals, school enrollment, and district size. Applications are reviewed and scored according to the criterion listed on page 6, which we will talk through later. Criterion 1, which addresses strategic direction, has been updated for the 2019-20 cycle. It now requires all district plans be cited for strategies that the district intends to initiate or expand. This is reflected in question 3 of the application and is based on the request for a broader context of how arts are integrated into each district. Lastly, as a response to the Arts Commission's commitment to cultural equity and inclusion work, 2 priority areas have been created as a starting point for addressing equity in arts education across Los Angeles County. The first priority point area is district size, which includes 2 tiers. Tier 1 includes those with enrollment of 10,000 to less than 20,000 students. Districts of this size will earn an additional 4 priority points. Tier 2 includes districts with an enrollment of 20,000 or greater. These large districts will earn an additional 8 priority points. The second area is unduplicated pupil count, which includes students eligible for free and reduced price meals, foster youth, and English language students. Districts eligible for these priority points have a student population of 72% or greater of unduplicated pupil count. 4 priority points will be given to districts with this criteria. Note that the 72% is the average number of unduplicated pupil count per district in Los Angeles County. The priority points area definitions can be found on page 6 of the guidelines alongside the complete list and description of all review criteria. The addition of the priority point areas increased the total possible points available to 112 points. To accommodate the priority point areas, an additional data request has been included in the district information section of the application for the unduplicated pupil count. The only other application update is located in the strategic direction section. Criterion 1 of the application includes an additional question. Question 6 now asks, based on Arts Ed profile data, how does the strategies address equitable access for students in your district? Again, the addition of this question is to assist the panel in getting a broader sense of arts education in your district and to further illustrate the connection of how you chose to address inequities in arts education with the strategy for which you're asking funding for. For those of you who are unaware of the Arts Ed profile, you can read a short description about it on page 2 of the guidelines, as I referenced earlier. Page 2 also includes the direct link to the online tool where you can view your school district's data if you aren't already using it. And if you have further questions about the Arts Ed profile report or the online tool, or if you would like to update the data displayed in the tool, you can reach out to either myself or my colleague Matt, our research associate, and we'll be able to assist you. We want to support eligible projects that will assist you in being successful in meeting your goals. To determine the awards, you will need to concisely describe your project in the outline application. Requests are due Wednesday, March 13th. Your applications will be read and reviewed by a peer panel that will convene in April. They will score the requests based on these 5 criteria. If your district meets the criteria of the new priority point areas, those additional points will be included in the final scores. Here you can see that each criterion is weighted by its specified amount of points. The application is split into sections that are aligned to this criteria. The definitions are outlined on page 6 of the guidelines, but to sum up each criterion, strategic direction allows you to tell the panel about your district and its arts education work, to identify goals and describe the connection to your district's plan and its sustainability in the district. Criterion 2 describes the details of the project that you're seeking funding for. You will want to address the who, what, when, and where the services will take place. Quality of project evaluation describes to the panel how you will be identifying project outcomes and the tools you will be using to measure those outcomes. Criterion 4 allows you to describe the experience of the people who will be involved in implementing the plan and their roles. And finally, fiscal capacity requires that you detail the budget expenses and identify revenue. Again, the new priority point areas that were described in the previous slide are identified in this section. Once the earned points from the review criteria 1 through 5 are averaged, priority points will be added for districts that meet the parameters listed. The score that the district receives from the panel will determine what percentage of the request is awarded. Awards are determined based on this basic equation up on the screen. Your district's funding request times the score will equal the award. Note that final awards may be adjusted across all applicants according to the available funds for the pool of awardees. This past year, the grant program awarded $748,000 to 42 districts, and the awards ranged from roughly $7,000 to $23,000. So note that the higher the score, the larger the award. On page 4 of the guidelines, you will find the grant expectations. Districts must invest a minimum of a 1-to-1 match. In-kind matching funds are not accepted. These funds may come from the district or its funding partners and must be applied towards the project detailed in the application. The district must assign a project lead to coordinate, implement, and monitor the project. They will be responsible for the completion of all project planning forms and participation in a dedicated grantee convening or a county-wide network event. Participating in the mid-year site visit and check-in with the assigned Arts Ed Collective District Liaison, and tracking data and completing the final report and invoice. Districts that are approved for funding will enter into a contract with Los Angeles County, which will govern the distribution of funds. Prior to contracting, the district must submit an adjusted grant budget and participation form to identify program changes based on the actual grant award. Contracts must be submitted to the Arts Ed Collective no later than September 30th. Please make special arrangements to include the contract in your district's August or September board agenda if appropriate to meet that deadline. Lastly, a final report will be due May 15th, 2020. The report will ask you for a narrative of outcomes, the final budget, participation data, and at least one work sample. Final invoices will also be due at this time. So this concludes the overview of our grant guidelines. I can take a couple of questions now if there are any. If not, we'll move on. Let me take a look at the chat. So we'll go ahead. Let's shift our focus on the details of the criteria for which the application will be scored. We will walk through each criteria alongside the corresponding questions within the application, and the criteria can be found on page 6 If you have not yet created a login to Fluid Review, you may reference the application questions by flipping to the bottom of page 5 of the application instructions. Here is a bulleted breakdown of the strategic direction criteria. It's the most heavily weighted section at 35 points. Here you can see which questions address each point of the criteria. Strategic direction is asking you to provide a detailed goals as identified from a district plan that are cited. To justify why now is the right time to address these specific projects and how it is addressing inequities in arts education across your districts. To provide clarity on how the request initiates or expands strategies for advancing arts education, to describe the resources that are being generated, and identifying a plan for sustainability. Let's look deeper at the corresponding questions. You will be providing a brief summary of arts education currently offered in your district, describing the most important shift in arts education that took place in your district during the 2019, and listing all strategies your district plans to initiate or expand during next year to move toward your long-term vision for arts education. Here you're also asked to cite the district plan that outlines each of these strategies. Recall that a panel will be reviewing and scoring your funding request. Some may have a background knowledge of the district, but it's unlikely that any will have current context of your district. These questions allow you to describe to the panel how arts education has existed in your district and describe the vision of where it's going. Note that question 3 is looking for you to list all strategies that are new or expanding. So itemize those strategies into a list. The narrative descriptions will come later. Question 4 asks you to briefly describe the strategies for which Arts Ed Collective funding is being asked. Here you will include a brief description of the strategy you're seeking for funding. This is focusing on the larger strategy, not the details of how the plan will be implemented. There will be space in the next section to address the details of the project plan. All items in the narrative should align with the budget, which is the final section of the plan. And for question 5, it asks, why is this the right time to undertake this effort? So when we're looking at this question, consider what makes the strategy important to implement right now. Is there new leadership in place or new staff? Has a recent accomplishment increased momentum? Is there more parent support, funding shifts? Why are you moving forward on this particular strategy right now that makes it so important? Our new question, question 6, again asks, based on the Arts Ed profile data, how is the strategy addressing equitable access for students? Consider the full picture of arts education in your district through the lens of the Arts Ed profile or other data collection methods that have been used. How does this strategy assist you in addressing gaps in arts education identified through these research tools? Moving on to sustainability on question 7, it asks what sustainable resources will be left behind as a result of implementing this strategy. Examples could be implementing or formalizing an ongoing arts council or a process, adopting systems for the arts, such as forming an arts committee that are used for other subject areas in the district, establishing a position or redefining a job description, providing teacher professional development, purchasing curriculum and providing training on it, Maybe you'll establish a protocol for principal walkthroughs on a regular basis. Or maybe you're able to change report cards to include the arts. Changing student and teacher assessments could also be an example. Lastly, we ask about the investment in the strategy. Is the specific project outlined in the application a short or long-term strategy? There isn't a right answer here. Is it a small or short-term project that can be completed within the grant period? Or is it a beginning step to a larger project that may span over several years? We encourage you to have conversations with leadership about accomplishing the strategies, remembering that the intention of this funding is to get a project started, to build momentum, with the rationale that the district will assume the sustainability of the project moving forward. For most district-wide projects, this funding award is very small, probably only covering a portion of the cost. So think about how you can best use this funding to leverage something in accomplishing the strategies and goals for your district. Moving on to criterion 2, which is the quality of the project plan. This is a highly weighted aspect of the funding request. This section of the application contains only 2 questions that are worth 30 points total. It investigates more deeply the designed plan and goals that are achievable for your district. This is where you get the opportunity to give us all the details about question 4. Question 9 asks you to thoroughly and specifically describe the details of your project plan. Be sure to include who will be participating, who will be providing the service, what the service will be, when and where it will take place. If relevant, can include the duration and frequency of the service. This response should outline all details of implementing the outlined strategy from question 4. And question 10 simply asks for you to identify which of the 5 art forms the strategy is addressing. Here is a bulleted breakdown of criterion 3, reviewing project evaluation. This section is worth 10 points. In criterion 3, we see 5 key components of the criterion and the questions that address each. Your evaluation should include focuses on quantity, quality, and equitable distribution. It should identify measurable goals for evaluating your accomplishments. The funding request should describe a clear and specific plan that will be put in place to monitor results. We highly suggest using and describing both quantitative and qualitative data for your evaluation, and you're using clear and appropriate evaluation methodologies. Panelists are generally found wanting in this section, so as strategic plans are updated and LCAP metrics are included, you may choose to include these metrics in your evaluation section of your application, or you can create new ones that are appropriate for the project. Let's take a look at the specific questions. What increases in quantity, quality, and equity of arts education will this project produce? And what other outcomes do you hope to achieve? Things to consider for this question: does your evaluation methodology fit the scale of your project? Does it directly relate to your project? If your project is implementing professional development for teachers, the evaluation should focus on the increases in teacher skills and knowledge through the implementation. It should not necessarily address student skills. We suggest setting benchmarks for participation and or benchmarks for implementing new skills and knowledge. The first part of question 13 is asking for you to identify tools you will use for measuring the project's success. Examples for teacher professional development could be observation protocols or surveys. Projects that include student learning may have tools such as pre- and post-curriculum assessments or rubric. Other tools that can be used for measurement could include checklists, written or verbal reflections, and written evaluations. Once you've identified tools to track your success, what will you do with the tool data? Part 2 is asking you to describe how you will review the collected data and apply it to make informed programming decisions in the future. Or maybe it's to review and make adjustments throughout the project. Examples could include sharing at a school board meeting or reviewing with an arts team or district administration to develop new goals for the future. Criterion 4 is focused on personnel capacity and is worth 15 total points. Here are the broad ideas. This section as a whole will illustrate a narrative around who will be implementing or overseeing the work, their roles, and experience. The emphasis in this set of questions is to clearly identify the qualifications of district staff who successfully managed the proposed project. What makes them qualified to implement this project? Provide evidence of support from multiple levels of district leadership. This includes who is signing off on the project certification before submission in order to demonstrate that the project plan was created collaboratively amongst different levels of district administration, staff, supervisors, art teams, assistant superintendents, or whoever else may be included in your district. And that buy-in among these colleagues exists to successfully manage and implement the proposed project. Lastly, if you plan on using a community arts partner, confirm on the website or with me directly that they have been approved on the Community Arts Educators Directory. I'll touch on this a little bit more in future slides. Question 14 asks you to identify the qualifying experience of the staff project lead to manage the project. Be realistic and specific about the amount of time allocated to this role. The question is specifically asking for a percentage of time on the project. I know that this can be really difficult, but do your best to make an informed guess at what that percentage might be. A lot of times panelists do get a little bit hung up when the question is not directly answered. Question 15 is asking about leadership. How is your executive leadership involved? Clearly define their role. Are they administering evaluation tools? Are they reviewing the data, supporting communication, or district buy-in? Whatever that is, describe their involvement in the project in this section. And finally, for question 16, if you have staff other than the project lead who is leading trainings or facilitating professional development sessions, please use this space to identify and define their roles and what their qualifications are to perform these responsibilities. If you are working with other partners such as LACO, TCAP, or a community arts partner, include who that partner is in this section and what their role will be, and identify their qualifications for completing that role. As for community arts partners, noted in question 16, if you plan on using community arts partners for any part of the project, please confirm that the artist or the arts organization is listed or approved for listing on the Community Arts Educators Directory on our website. You may propose providers not approved for listing. However, they must complete an online directory application by March 27th. Providers who do not meet all criteria will not be approved for the directory and cannot be funded to the grant project. Contact either myself or your district liaison immediately to determine if a proposed provider is approved. If they are not, staff must be notified to provide access to the online application for the directory. Please note that the provider must provide multiple letters of recommendation and curriculum samples, as well as the completed online application. No late applications will be accepted. So as you're going through this process, that application will run alongside. They may be asking you for letters of recommendation. So no, it is a process that will also take some time. And if that's something that you're thinking about doing, let's get that moving as quickly as possible. For those unaware of the Community Arts Educators Directory, it is a vetted list of arts education providers who have participated in a peer review process that looked at their artistic and educational capacity and quality. The directory is located, as I mentioned, on the Arts Ed Collective website that can be filtered by discipline, grade, and content. I will say that currently not all of the approved providers have been published to the directory since the new website has went live. So if you don't see a provider and you believe that a provider is approved on the directory and you just don't see them, please contact me and we'll discuss further. The fiscal capacity section is worth 10 points. In completing this section, be accurate, concise, and clearly identify the items that will assist the panel in fully understanding your request. Take an outsider's perspective. Does the budget tell the same story that the narrative describes in the project plan? And are all the costs accounted for? The highest priority for this section is that the expense details are described clearly and calculated accurately. Example items to include in the details are rates for teacher stipends or substitute costs, provider fees. Do your research to accurately estimate cost of supplies and fees. Contact arts providers for estimates if that's appropriate, or transportation and busing costs. You may wish to identify or reiterate the type and number of instruments purchased, or the number of days of training, the number of hours of instruction, but note that these types of items are also important to include in the project plan section. The budget must demonstrate no less than a 1-to-1 cash match. That means that if you're requesting $25,000, you're planning for at least a $50,000 project. And remember that in-kind matching funds are not accepted. If your project is over $50,000, you will demonstrate the district cash sources to exceed the requested funding amount. For example, a $60,000 project will require a $35,000 district cash match commitment. Sources of matching funds should be defined in the revenue details section at the bottom of the budget table. Again, ideas listed in the narrative in question 4 and in the project plan should be explained in the budget and vice versa. Ensure that all project expenses are eligible as reviewed earlier in this presentation. Note that the expense total should equal the revenue total, which includes your request and the cash match. If you receive a red error as you're going through the application, you may need to confirm that your expenses and revenues are balanced, or that the district cash match meets or exceeds the funding request. So that kind of concludes our exploration of the application questions and criteria. Are there any questions that came up specifically within this section? If not, you can always hold your questions to the end. So the question that I'm getting on the chat is, does the project lead need to be a district employee, or can they come from an arts education partner organization? We do prefer that a district employee be the lead. We have had cases where we have a combination of both. So there'll be somebody from the district that we can always contact, and then somebody who is their partner through an arts organization that is helping implement. And so if that's the case, I keep both of those folks in the loop on upcoming grant deadlines and whatnot. But we do prefer to have at least somebody from the district as our kind of primary contact. Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and move forward. We can definitely take more questions at the end. So last year, the Arts Commission transitioned to a new online grant management system called Fluid Review. All applications, forms, invoices, and grant reports must be submitted via the new system. So if you have not, please download the application instructions document to assist you in learning to use the online portal. If you participated in the program last year, you will be using the same user account to access the district's application. New users to the portal must register a new user account. So all applications will be submitted electronically in the portal. This may be very familiar for some of you. To get started, you will first need to visit the Fluid Review website. This link can also be accessed from the Advancement Grant page on the Arts Ed Collective website. You may follow along on your digital devices if you wish. Of course, you can always refer back to this webinar in the future. So registered users may sign in directly from the page that looks just like this. For new applicants, you'll have to click the Sign Up to register a new user account and profile. New applicants should complete the user information registration. Note that the user avatar and photo is optional. This step will prompt you to enter your name, email address, and to create a password. Please note that the account profile will be registered to an individual, so only one email may be used per individual account. Make sure anyone who is going to be completing the application has the email and password, as they will not be able to access the portal or previous applications from separate accounts. So as you're creating, if you're a new user, think about shared passwords and email addresses. Once you're finished, click Register. This should lead to a page titled Thank You for Registering, which will inform you that a confirmation email is being sent to the email address that you provided. Check your email. The email title should be Confirm Registration, and it will be from Apply LACAC. Within, you'll find instructions to confirm. If you don't see that, it usually shows up pretty quickly. If you don't see it within 10 minutes or so, definitely go check your spam folder to see that it didn't get filtered out. From the email link, you will be sent to the grants dashboard as seen here after you log in. The first task is to complete the user setup form. Click Start to begin. As an advancement grant applicant, you'll choose organization, which will allow you to select school district once you're in the form. So fill out the information as it applies. For items that do not apply, such as the DUNS number, please just type no response. You will be required to identify the county supervisorial district where the school district office is located. If you don't know where that is already, you can look it up on your own through the link that is provided in the form. You will be directed to a county website where you can look up the district by address. So once on the county site, make sure to select the district map lookup by address from the drop-down. Enter only numbers into the first box and the street name into the second box. This will generate a very long list of electoral districts. You're looking for one that says supervisorial, and it should be a number 1 through 5, and you'll enter that into your user setup field. Make sure to save and submit the form by clicking Save and Exit. This should direct you back to the dashboard. The status on the task should then read Complete in green. Once user setup has been completed, your grant section should appear. Click the green View Grants button to see the list of grants you're eligible for. Then click Create Application to open the Advancement Grant application. It will now always appear in your grants dashboard, as this one is on the screen. Each time you log in, you will return to the dashboard with your task and your grants. Scroll down the dashboard to find the application in the list of your grants. Click the Start button to begin the application. Note that once you have started the application and return to the dashboard, the status of your application will appear in progress or complete. Click Edit next to the item to allow you to work within the application, or you can always click the blue application title on the left. Once you click into the application, you will see the application is broken out into 7 tasks. These 7 tasks align with the grant criteria that we covered earlier. The tasks can be completed in any order. The progress bar lets you know what percentage of the application is complete and which items are outstanding. There's a list right underneath the bar. As you complete each section, the status will change from incomplete to a green complete icon. Filling out this application will take some time, so you may want to save and come back. You may save work in a section without completing the task and return later by clicking the Edit button. We strongly recommend submitting your application at least 5 days prior to the deadline to ensure enough time. As with previous paper applications, once each task is complete, the application must be certified by an authorized official that has authority to sign legally binding documents on behalf of your district. You may complete this task in 2 ways. Provide the login information to the authorizing official for them to review the application in full and then digitally sign and certify. Or you may download and save a copy to share with the official. They can review and sign a hard copy. Please keep the hard copy in your grant records and enter the appropriate information into the online application. Once the application has been reviewed and certified, the final action is to click the Submit Your Grant button at the bottom of the page. As you're making your way through the application, please make sure to save often and ensure that the tasks are complete when you go back to the dashboard before moving on. Once you have completed and submitted your application, we suggest to download and save a copy of the final application of your submission. The budget task is split into 2 sections. The top section is expenses, shown here. It should include all expenses for proposed projects during the grant period. This includes all items being paid for through grant funds and district cash match. Enter the total expenses for each budget category as appropriate in the first column. Categories are consistent with those of prior years for those returning and include the following categories: direct services for students, professional development, curriculum development, district arts coordination, instruments, equipment, and instructional materials, and the final section is other. Provide the context for all expenses in the expense detail column 2. The table following is a total expenses table. A formula is included to automatically calculate the cells from the previous table. So you do not need to enter any data into this cell. If it is not calculating correctly, be sure that you did not include commas in the cells from the above table. At the bottom of the budget task section, you'll enter revenue information. This section should include all cash that the district is putting towards the proposed project during the grant period. It may be more than the funding request. The next cell is the funding request. Enter the amount up to $25,000 that the district is requesting from the advancement grant. The following table describes the total revenue as calculated from the above revenue table. A formula is also included here to automatically calculate the cells in the previous table. The same applies. You do not need to enter any data into the cell. Again, if it's not calculating correctly, be sure that you did not include any commas. Sometimes we've noticed that the formulas do trip up sometimes. So if it's not working, you know you don't have any commas, you may just save and exit and come back and it may calculate correctly. You can also contact me. Beyond the formulas to calculate the total expenses and revenue, additional formula tables are included to assure that the guideline expectations are being met or exceeded. So these tables are titled Meets or Exceeds Guidelines. Again, you do not need to enter data into these cells. The first table, as seen here, will populate true if you have met or exceeded the one-to-one cash match. The second table, which is not on the current screen, will populate true if you've presented a balanced budget where your expenses equal your revenue. Below this section, we'll display expense totals, which is the sum of all of the items in the first column of the first table, and revenue totals side by side, so you can see a little summary. Remember to save often and before you exit each page so that you don't lose your work. This is very important. I could not reiterate it enough. I only heard a few people that might have lost stuff, so make sure to continually push save as you're exiting pages. That concludes the overview of the grant portal. Again, the downloadable application instructions are available as a guide for troubleshooting the portal if you can't get a hold of me immediately. As for the final details, the deadline for submission is March 13th. All applications must be submitted electronically using the new online grant portal. Panels will convene in April for the review. We will notify all applicants by the end of June. If awarded, a notification will be sent to you and your superintendent. By August, the adjusted budget and participation form will be available via the online portal. Please note that a contract will not be issued to your district until this form has been submitted and reviewed by Arts Ed Collective staff. Once approved, the Advancement Grant Program contract will be issued to your district. The deadline for executed contracts are no later than September 30th. The projects can only begin once the contracts are fully signed. So fully executed contracts must include 2 signatures from the district the superintendent, and the school board president or an officer. It also must include 2 county signatures. So please note that once you return the contract to us, it will take up to 3 weeks to execute the contract with the final 2 county signatures. Work that takes place before the contract is executed is not an eligible grant expense. And so please make special arrangements to include the contract on your board agendas if that's something that needs to be done to get the contract signed by September 30th. Contract activities must be completed by May, and the final report is due on May 15th. Note, we can schedule the site visits at any time, but we try to do it midway through your project. So we usually say between November and April 15th, and those are flexible. We'll be working one-on-one with your district liaison to schedule those site visits. So that concludes the webinar. All of the information that I have for you about the new guidelines and the applications. Does anybody have any questions? If there aren't any additional questions, we can go ahead and tie up everything and you guys can go on with your day. As you're going through the guidelines and the application, or if you stumble upon through the fluid review process, my contact information is on the screen. I am out and about at site visits a lot now, so I would suggest perhaps sending an email first, and then we can schedule a time to chat. I'm available to help with all of those items, or of course, if you know your district liaison, they are also available to assist in anything that you might need. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us today on the webinar, and I hope to be talking with you soon and reviewing lots of applications. Have a great day.